Golden Doves, page 144. This is class 237. A dramatic story in the Talmud illustrates the options available to the sage. Very interesting. Why is he talking about the options available to the sage? Because the previous paragraph we said that whereas in the field of economics, new events may warrant the revision and change of the monetary system, the sage was no longer in the position to mint new values. Henceforth, silence became the earmark of the Jewish sage. So the point is that with the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash and with the Roman occupation of Jerusalem, so how do you deal with that at the level of rabbinic knowledge? And sometimes the only thing to do is to be silent. My father said that part of the Sephardic experience, especially in Spain, and especially among the conversos, is the idea of silence, because there is no point in arguing. There is no point in discussing. There's a famous debate between Haramban with the Nun, Nachmanides, and one of the Torquemada, I don't know which inquisitor, it doesn't matter. I probably have the name wrong. And my father's position on that was, it's like this: who are you arguing with? Like it's in life sometimes it's good to know not to argue, right? Sometimes it's just better. I'll give you an example. Now people like to argue with the Palestinians. They get on TV and have these long-winded debates with the Palestinians. And I think that they're nonsensical. They're nonsensical to have these debates. I mean, we understand that the Palestinians are Amalek and they're sadistic people. Well, why would you argue? I mean, would you argue with a hyena? Do you tell the hyena you really shouldn't eat a human baby? I mean, it's a hyena. There's no point in having that discussion with a hyena. So, I would say the same thing. I'm just giving you an example of how silence sometimes is the only answer. I would not argue with any Palestinians today. That's not the correct approach. It's meaningless. So similarly, the Hachamim in the days of the persecutions of the Jews at the hands of the Romans, during and post the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, was a similar type of a situation. So I'm going to be reading now the story in Masechet Shabbat, Daf Lamed Gimel, Amud Bet. The story concerns Roman persecution in Judea at the time of Hadrian. The event unfolds at the Rabbinic Academy. Three of the protagonists are distinguished pupils of Rabbi Akiva. So now this is the generation after Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was killed by the Romans. We know the famous story in Masechet Berachot of Samech Bet, Amud Bet, I think. So this is post that event. And here are the three protagonists. Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, who was chairing the meeting, introduced the topic for discussion. It alluded to the Roman conquest and benefits of civilization that it brought. How comely are the activities of this nation? They have set up markets, they have set up bridges, they have set up bathhouses. So that's what Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai says in praise of the Romans who are occupying Israel. They brought advancement and modernity to Israel. So he's apparently praising them. I mean, again, it's a rhetorical tool used by the Hachamim oftentimes is to say something provocative just to see what the reactions would be. But we're always looking for intelligent reactions. We're not looking for crazy people raising their voices. Just so you understand what that was about. This statement, depending on the way it was enunciated, could have been interpreted as praise or sarcasm. Elsewhere, Rabbi Yehuda is described as a sage, Hacham, when he chooses. Hacham when he chooses, that's nice. Implying thereby that he was shrewd. Right? He probably enunciated the statement in a tone that could have been interpreted either way. His position as chairman of the meeting would have warranted impartiality. The Romans interpreted or chose to interpret it as praise, right? So apparently there were Roman spies there, or it could have been Jews, left-wing liberal loonies there as well. And maybe they went and told the Romans what the rabbi said. We always have left-wing liberal loony Marxist crazies in our midst. It's a plague. Hopefully when the Mashiach comes, we will be cured from that mental illness. But be that as it may, whether it was the Romans themselves who were spying or whether they had these Jews who tattletailed, who knows? Okay. Rabbi Yehuda was rewarded and appointed as chief spokesman for all occasions. So the Romans rewarded Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai because, again, they interpreted it as praise. The Gemara says, Rosh HaMedaberim Bechol Makom. That's his reward. Rabbi Yosef ben Halafta, mid-second century, Shatak, kept silent. So Rabbi Yosef ben Halafta took the converso approach, and the approach that I like to take today, which is, you don't have to, there's no point in arguing. I myself put out Instagram videos, sometimes about politics and about what's happening. I'm not putting it out to change anybody's mind. I'm putting it out for the people who understand the truth and they want to understand intellectually why their position is correct, right? This was not a withdrawal. So to be saying in being silent, that wasn't a withdrawal. Renowned for his oratorical skills, Rabbi Yosef's refusal to speak constituted a most eloquent outcry, protesting the impossibility of speech. The fact that he's not talking when he could talk itself is a loaded message. The Romans understood this quite well. He was sentenced and banished to Galilee. So he basically was banished from the yeshiva. And then there is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, or as religious Israelis like to refer to him, Rashbi. Sorry, couldn't help that. Everything they have set up for their own needs, says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The benefits are part of the warfare strategy to further question the people. They have set up markets, put in them whores. Or modern TV, where a person just wants to watch a clean-cut television show, and then they have to have a hoary scene or disgusting, perverse scene, right? So they have to show. If your interpretation of American society was based upon Hollywood TV shows, you would think that 90% or 99% of the population is either lesbian, gay, trans, and there's very, very few actual people. Like, if there's a male who likes a female, it's a very unusual situation. There's something wrong with them. Maybe they should be criticized or the subject of scrutiny and suddenly the subject of prejudice. But anyway, so they put the whores in the marketplace so as to corrupt the people. Bathhouses for their own pleasure. I mean, you have the wealthy country clubs is for their pleasure. Bridges to impose on them and through them taxes. Well, right. Why else have bridges? New York City now has a congestion tax, right? Because there's a lot of cars in New York, so we want to help with the congestion. The traffic is terrible in New York, so they're imposing a tax. And it's very clear to me and other intelligent people that it's going to help with the congestion. There's going to be less traffic in New York. Right? They just want to collect money. That's all. There's going to be just as much traffic in New York as there always was. The real purpose behind the economic boom was the establishment of whorehouses to further undermine the people. He had cleverly switched bathhouses, Rabbi Yehuda's third item, to the second place. That's very interesting. So Rabbi Yehuda, when he's praising the Romans, he says as follows. He starts with the marketplaces, then he goes to the bridges, then he goes to the bathhouses. Again, marketplaces, bridges, bathhouses. When Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai answers, he switches the order. Right? He starts with markets, which is what Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai started with, but then instead of going on to bridges, he goes to the marketplaces. right? And then at the very end, he goes to the bridges. Why switch? Hey. He had cleverly switched bathhouses to the second place. Should have been bridges. The bathhouses, which the Romans dangled as the highest prize their system of values could offer, were not accessible to all. The purpose of the last item, bridges, second in the Beulah statement, is not the improvement of transportation, but to help the army tighten its grip on the people and to collect taxes. When you have bridges, A, you can collect taxes for the people, and B, you can use the bridges to invade and more effectively deploy your armed forces against the people from whom you're collecting the taxes. These taxes made it difficult for those who wished to evade the system and to trade in their villages, right? The new economic boom forced the farmer and the villager to trade in the market centers. Eventually, like today, if you want to do business, I mean, if you're a retailer, you have to get onto Amazon and do business on Amazon. I mean, there's not too many choices anymore. Eventually, the farmer and the villager would be exposed to the whorehouses and all they represented. The bridges thus tightened the system of the Romans and considerably reduced the possibilities of avoiding the benefits of civilization. That's very interesting. Right. The Romans sentenced Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai to death. He escaped and hid in the mountains for 12 years. A fourth participant, Yehuda ben Gerim, collaborated with the enemy and brought the whole matter to the attention of the Roman authorities. He was a left-wing, liberal, loony, Marxist Jew. Probably was a Harris voter. And he's the one who brought it to the attention of the Roman authorities. I just want to say one thing. The Democrat Party was not always the party of crazies, but it's important in life to understand when a transformation takes place, when a metamorphosis takes place. So, God forbid, I'm not saying, but just God forbid, a person marries a woman, but the woman metamorphoses, there's a metamorphosis of the woman to something else. Will he stay with the woman? If she's not a woman anymore. You ever see the movie The Fly? There was a woman who was in love with a person, but he turned into a fly. He's a fly. You can't be with him anymore, right? So, you have to know when to fold them. And the words of the great Hasid Umot Ha'olam She'eno Chelek L'Olam Haba, Johnny Cash, you have to know when to fold them. So I'm just saying this to Jews who might be listening and say, oh my gosh, we voted Democrat all our lives. The Democrat Party has become the party of flies. It's a lunatic party. They're not the Democrats of JFK. So just you have to learn how to make that switch in your mind. Yes, it's called Democrat, or Vincent Price in The Fly was called a human, but he actually was a fly at some point in time. Yeah. So a fourth participant, Yehuda ben Gerim, collaborated with the enemy and brought the whole matter to the attention of the Roman authorities. He was the only one to meet with a tragic end. One day in the market, he casually met Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, at whose feet he had once studied. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai looked at him, and he turned into a pile of bones. This story excellently portrays the typologies of the sage. He has only 4 options. They are diplomacy, cunning, which is what Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai did; silence, Rabbi Yosef bar Halafta; confrontation, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai; and collaboration with the adversary, Yehuda ben Gerim. Judaism rejects the fourth totally and categorically. It is important to note that the third option, namely confrontation, unless processed into political and possibly military terms, which essentially transcend the sage and could distort his views, may end in silence. Because, it's like, okay, you're being confrontational. So what? So the Romans come and they arrest you, or not arrest you. They wanted to take him probably and execute him, and he ran away. So it turns into silence, right? That's the truth. And so just to be confrontational is not always the solution. probably due to the solitude he had to face in his long flight from the enemy, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai became a mystic. Jewish mysticism is silence at its best. Yeah, see the Homo Mysticus to understand that better. Therefore, in essence, his position coincided with that of Rabbi Yosef. That's a great point. Diplomacy, too, is a kind of silence. Although there may be some merit in diplomacy, silence is the ideal typology of the Jewish sage. But this silence is not merely the absence of speech. It is manifested through a complex system of transmission involving repetition and change. Specifically, silence is realized first by repeating the words of others, the Mishnah, and second by studying, that is, commenting upon the commentaries of others, the Gemara. Accordingly, silence may be defined as speech, honest speech, affected either by repetition or by comment. And that's the end of, wow, we have only one small section left, transmission and change, and we are done with the book.